Hi, Patrick. So, more essays from you. Good. Let's get right into it. Some people believe that employment over the age of 60 is not right and creates lots of problems, so people should retire after 60 and not work. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this opinion? All right, well, let's see what you had to say. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated whether employers who turn their 60 should go for their retirement or not. Some people think that allowing these people to work might bring some harmful consequences. However, I completely disagree with this statement. This essay will argue that employing the older generation brings more merits than drawbacks, using examples from the UK government and Oxford University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. All right, well done. However, your first sentence had some problems, okay, grammatically. Let's try it again. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated whether... You don't mean employers, you mean employees. In other words, the people who work. Employers are the boss. So what you want here is employees. So have debated whether employees who turn 60, not their 60, that's incorrect, should, and I wasn't really crazy about this, go for their retirement. It doesn't sound like natural English. So instead, what I would do for this sentence is this. Etc., etc., have debated whether employees who turn 60 should retire or not. That's it. Okay? And then the rest of the paragraph was absolutely fine. So, moving on. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that hiring people who reach their 60s might have a detrimental impact on the firm's efficacy. Now, here I want you to be careful. Nobody was suggesting that people over 60 are hired. The question is not whether they get new jobs. The question is whether they stop working in general. Okay? So this is not accurate here. What you want to say instead is retaining people. So it should read, on the one hand, there is ample evidence that retaining people who reach 60 or who are in their 60s, but you can't say their 60s, reach their 60s. It's not accurate. Okay. The central reason behind this is twofold. Now, I don't really care for a comma after this. It should either be a colon or a semicolon. Firstly, this group's computer illiteracy can cause disruptions. As a consequence, performing basic tasks might be drastically slow and affect the company's profit. Secondly, the older generation's state of health is often below the average. For instance, recent empirical research by the UK government demonstrated that 60% of all corporations which employed older workers have initially experienced a considerable drop of their income for the reasons of sick leaves, which were taken by the older group of employees. Careful, again. Although the above-mentioned drawbacks, you can't do this here, by the way, Patrick, okay? Although is a linking word that needs a clause, and by that I mean it needs at the bare minimum a subject, a noun, and a verb. Here you don't have a verb. So instead, it should be despite. So, despite the above-mentioned drawbacks, it must not be forgotten that recent discoveries in medicine and specially designed IT courses make this group of people more valuable for the corporations. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that not sending these people for retirement initially might be harmful for the company. However, the state-of-the-art medicine and the new IT approach will erase these complications. Okay. Let's move on. On the other hand, although there is a case opinion that employing the elderly might have detrimental consequences, their input during everyday tasks at work cannot be overstated. This is largely because of their completely different approach compared to younger people's attitude. For instance, an extensive study by Oxford University showed that over 90% of corporations with mixed-age employees, I'm going to say it again, experienced threefold higher profit in comparison to places where only younger employees were hired. Consistent with this line of thinking is the fact that employees in their 60s possess extensive knowledge without the "and," possess extensive knowledge about their profession, which undoubtedly, you're missing some letters here, will boost companies' profit. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that employing the older generation is undoubtedly, like one sentence apart and you still wrote it wrong, beneficial for a company's profit. Okay, so from, you don't want for here, you want from. From the arguments and examples given. I firmly believe that although these people's conditions and lack of abilities in using technology, again, you can't use although here, so instead use despite. Their completely different perspective and wisdom makes them unbelievably priceless workers, and they should not retire. All right, it's fine. It's good, actually. I liked it, and I mean, yeah, there were some mistakes throughout in terms of the grammar, in terms of the words, but it was a good attempt. You've got the idea down well. And I thought this was interesting because you talked about why people think that they should leave, and then you basically said, you know, no, they're wrong. So I like that you did this. That was a good way to do it. And it was a nice segue into your paragraph. So it was a good attempt. Let's take a look at now at your second essay. Okay. Why did you call this a drug chart? I wanted you to call it a bar chart. And you know what would really be helpful? If you actually included the image in your file so that I can refer to it to make sure the information is there, accurate, and so forth. Okay. So the bar chart above presents how many microprocessors were sold in France in 2017 by the two main suppliers, Intel and AMD. Overall, it can be clearly seen that the biggest number of chips in the Intel company were sold in June, November, and December. Whereas is what you want here. Whereas, one word, AMD experienced the best sales in February and July. To begin with, you don't have to say the Intel company. You can just say Intel, all right? So to begin with, Intel during the first 3 months experienced nearly a twofold growth to reach nearly 100,000. Now you don't need the S here, okay? Okay. On the contrary, the AMD company, again, you could have just called it AMD, in spite of reaching the highest sales in February at 130,000, no S, chips sold. Okay, get rid of this. AMD remained on the level between, I don't know what this means, remained on the level. Why don't you just say remained between 25 to 35,000 in. You don't even have to do this. Between January and May. Okay? To reach a low of 0 in June. Interestingly, in the same period for the Intel company, the number of here chips in April, May, and June increased sharply to reach 35, 80, and 140,000 sold chips. You don't need of, respectively. Okay. Over the 6 months, the range of sold microprocessors in both companies was utterly different. In the Intel company, there was a constant growth from 25,000, no S, in July to range between 60 and 70,000, no S, between, whoa, what's happening here? This is a lot of information, and it's almost becoming a little too complicated. So, let's try it again. In the Intel company, there was a constant growth from 25,000 in July to between 60 and 70,000 between August and October, to finish at approximately 110,000, no S, in November and December. A little too much information in one sentence, okay? In comparison to Intel, AMD, no the, witnessed the one of the highest sales, you didn't need the one, in June at 110,000, to level off to a range between 50 and 80,000 between August and October to end. Oh, wow. Too much information. I feel overwhelmed. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so looking at this again, from what I understand, you split your paragraphs basically based on chronology. In other words, you split the first half of the year in one paragraph and the second half of the year in the other paragraph. Okay, I mean, you could do it. It's fine. That's one way. You know, there's more than one way to do this, obviously. So that way is an appropriate way, I would say. Although I need to tell you that in the beginning when I read it, it wasn't clear that that's what you were doing. So you might have wanted to give like an introductory sentence here. So when you say to begin with, and just mention that you're going to talk about the first 6 months, like between Intel experienced many interesting changes in the first 6 months of the year, and then go into the details. Because like I said, when I was reading it, I was kind of like, where am I going with this? And I had to read it a second time to realize, like, oh, okay, he's going through it like that. Now that's one way you could have done it. Another way you could have done it is spent a paragraph analyzing Intel and another paragraph analyzing AMD, and when you get to that second paragraph analyzing AMD, you can then make the relevant comparisons back to Intel that you have already discussed. It's fine. I found, yeah, it's fine. I just felt like sometimes I was bogged down with so much detail. There's a really fine line between not enough detail and too much detail, and I felt like here, you know, these ranges between, and then 25, and then 60 and 70, and then 110, I was at one point confused, and I had a difficult time kind of visualizing the information because of how you expressed it. But for your second attempt, you've got the right idea, but just do keep in mind what I said about writing it in such a way that the reader can visualize or even draw what you're describing. Okay, so now obviously you need to correct these essays. You need to add the errors to your error correction list, write new essays for us, and send them back within the next day or so. All right, we're here. We're looking forward to them. So with that, I bid you goodbye and looking forward to the rest of your essays.